the murderer, the butcher of Tehran, Raisi, maybe says that there are signs that the Holocaust happened. I know, my family knows what happened during the Holocaust. And I mean, it's a consensus in Israel. We will do whatever is needed to stop the Iranian regime from acquiring nuclear capabilities.
Well, that's Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, speaking with me after he walked out during Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi's speech at the UN last month. And he also, in our interview, warned about the regime's brutality, continued terrorism, and we are seeing that playing out right now against the Iranian people on the streets of their country. The mass protests in Iran continuing against the theocratic regime. Many young people angry over the theocratic restrictions. The activism sparked after the death of Masha Amini in police custody, now in their fourth week. Human rights groups say the violent crackdown has so far killed 185 protesters, including 19 children. Lisa Daftari is editor-in-chief at the Foreign Desk and joins us now. You know, Lisa, we've been looking at horrific scenes. The reports that the regime just cuts down protesters in the streets. One guy was sitting in his car. Horrible brutality that exposes the inhumanity of this despicable and dangerous dictatorship. How long do you think these protests will continue, and can they continue?
Well, they're not going home anytime soon. This is the bravest, the most courageous we have seen these protesters. This was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And of course, the catalyst being that innocent 22-year-old girl who was just showing a little bit of her hair. But there are so many like her and so many victims of this regime. And that's what the protesters are saying. This is, in fact, led by the women of Iran who are saying all we want is freedom. But they are backed by men and people all across the country in every city. This is a pure grassroots movement that is not attached to any religion or any city or any political group. This is a pure movement of the Iranian people who have just one message for the world, and that is that they are fighting for their freedom, and they will not back down anytime soon. This is truly the best chance that they've ever had to topple this regime.
What can the West do? What can the White House do to give that a push to help them to get rid of this regime once and for all?
Right, the most important question, because they're asking for support, right? They're asking for the mainstream media to cover this. They're asking for all kinds of support. So it will start with that verbal support, but we just can't stop at the podium. The next step will be for the United States to back away from the JCPOA, from the nuclear negotiation table. It's one thing, like Robert Malley, the Iran envoy for the United States, said this week, we are not going to support regime change in Iran, even though we do verbalize support for the protesters. It's one thing to not support regime change. It's another to give them billions of dollars. Do you really have to support their terrorism? Do you have to support the money that the Iran regime will put back into the Revolutionary Guard, into the Basij forces, into the morality police, into Hamas and Hezbollah, and the list goes on and on. So the United States has to understand the gravity of legitimizing this regime by giving them billions of dollars, by giving them that handshake and letting them off the hook for so many of the human rights violations. And the third will be to creatively come up with a way to give resources, organizational resources, to the protesters, to give them the catalyst for the next step in this movement to continue.
President Obama, during the Green Revolution, was seen as making a real blunder and mistake. Critics saying that he had an opportunity, could have had an opportunity back then. What more, or what could President Biden do right now, as well as others, as you say, to try and support them? Besides, I mean, he's not going to get out of, or try to get out of the Iranian nuclear deal. I mean, on one hand, he's for human rights. The other hand, he wants to give them billions of dollars. So realistically, folks watching right now, what can we do?
Well, continue with the support. I mean, Eric, I thank you for bringing this to people's attentions. And after I was on with you on Fox News last time, I got so many messages thanking Fox News and thanking you for giving this airtime. Continue sharing the videos. Those who are at home, continue with the hashtags. This is a human rights movement. It's a pure movement, as I said. This is not something that's political. It should be bipartisan. It should have support across the board. The Biden administration or the Trump administration or the Obama administration, doesn't matter who's in office. This is for the betterment of the world, to stop the biggest global supporter of terrorism, to help the young people in Iran who are telling us their story. Look, we don't have reporters on the ground in Iran, but we do have millions of citizen journalists who, despite the internet crackdowns, are finding proxies and finding ways to get online to send us those videos. We're putting them up on the foreign desk around the clock to continue their story. They're telling us if we're willing to be brave enough and courageous enough to go out onto the streets and risk being killed for peaceful protests, the least you can do is be our partners in all of this, in allowing us to have voices across the world, to have our story told.
And you can see, folks, you can see those videos, and you can help by going to the foreign desk, Lisa's site, and also by looking at foxnews.com. Our stellar foreign affairs coverage has these videos and has these articles ongoing. It is just a growing movement, and one can only hope that one day Tehran will again be free. Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Guest. Lisa, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.